You're going to run into one of these individuals sometime in your life, more than once, and the encounter could either be exhilarating, thrilling, exciting, or devastating. More likely the latter. Most of the psychopaths are living right next to us and living a reasonably normal life, but creating some sort of distress, psychological or environmental or financial, for others around them.
Psychopaths don't act or look crazy. In fact, they're masters at appearing normal. Their main defect, severe emotional detachment, they don't feel emotion, but act as if they do. They know right from wrong, but lack remorse and empathy. Psychopaths are pathological liars who love to con and manipulate others.
You're kind of surprised because you have the feeling that they think and feel the way we do. And they're going to respond to a situation much the way we do, and they're going to be empathetic and loving and warm and honest, full of integrity. And this often doesn't happen.
It's quite clear that psychopaths operate at a very basic physiological level. They don't experience the same kinds of emotions that the rest of us do that makes our lives quite rich, whether it's positive or negative emotions, sort of the roller coaster of life, engaging in various thrill-seeking behaviors to try to get a bit of a bang, to get away from that sort of flat line.
They're not psychotic, out of touch with reality, quickly weighing the risks and benefits first, and it's all about reward.
They are ultra-rational thinkers. They don't have the clouding of emotion that the rest of us do, and certainly make conscious decisions, rational decisions about whether to commit an action that, at least at a cognitive level, they understand is wrong. They know that society looks at that behavior and that outcome extremely negatively.
The beginning of the relationship, very whirlwind, very love bombing, attention, sex, whatever. The intensity of that is like no other.
As one psychopath admitted,
he said, I throw a hook out for empathy. And depending on how they respond to that is whether I will pursue it. There's no use going there if she doesn't take the bait.
while psychopaths themselves have no empathy, they're masterful playing the sympathy card whenever it's needed.
They just find what works in terms of tapping into the empathy within the women.
Another powerful tool in the psychopath arsenal is sex. Some theorize they have such a high sex drive because it's a physiological act that allows the psychopath to feel something. Sandra Brown thinks there's more to it.
There's a release of oxytocin, the sex hormone, which creates a sensation of bonding and also of trust.
Once hooked, the psychopath works quickly. After a whirlwind romance with a man she thought was her soulmate.
It was like being hypnotized. He would just gaze into my eyes and just have that intensity that there was no one else in the room but us. He seemed very charming. We had a lot of the same interests. I had hoped I was able to make that dream come true with him. Since this was a very sad and lonely soul, and I could feel that sadness in his heart, and I wanted to help share my love and understanding with him, and just to help him have a brighter future.
But there were warning signs that not all his stories were true. She discovered he wasn't single after all, but he assured her a divorce was imminent. Despite some nagging doubts, Elaine agreed to marry him. That's when everything changed.
I didn't matter to him in the same way now that he, in a sense, had me. And just like the thrill was off. He was the hunter and he had caught the prey. And he would get angry at the slightest thing. He could look you in the eye and lie, and yet, it just didn't even blink. He didn't faze him one bit. He was just a master at twisting the facts, twisting the information. He tripped our little boy, and then he smirked when he was just learning to walk. I think that he really enjoyed that. But I remember I would look and then just be shocked by that brief moment where the mask dropped. Who am I with? Who is this person? And it does feel like he's a total stranger. It made me feel like I was going crazy.
As his angry outbursts escalated, so did her fear. Desperate for help, she went to see a counselor. His words were chilling.
Your husband is a psychopath, and that his behavior, he will always behave that way. They can't change. This is hardwired in them. And that's what's so hard to understand. It's like if someone has a disease or an illness, that will be with them. They hurt their partners financially, physically, emotionally, sexually.
What science is still trying to unravel is the mystery of their minds. A key experiment: how the psychopath goes about selecting his victim. Using facial expressions, psychopaths could accurately detect fear in people from a very young age. Porter's colleague at UBC Kelowna, Dr. Michael Woodworth.
We expected across the board they'd have trouble recognizing the different emotions due to their emotional deficits. We found that they did actually better at recognizing fearful faces, suggesting that even at quite an early age, they are already starting to engage in a sort of predatory-like thinking where they're able to pick out certain individuals or see cues in their environment.
So there's a specific circuit very deep in the brain that is responsive to essentially anything that we find innately pleasurable. So things like money, drugs, sex, chocolate. When you look at a psychopathic brain's response to reward, what we find is that the more psychopathic the individual is, the stronger that this area of the brain lights up to reward. And another circuit of the brain that we know to be responsible for empathy, for the regulation of emotion, for motivating pro-social behavior, for regulating our moral judgments, we also see some degraded connections in that circuit of the brain.
There is reduced connectivity between these two areas of the brain: the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The primitive emotions of fear and pleasure-seeking weren't being moderated by the brain's executive power center.
You have brains that seem to be hypersensitive to reward, brains that seem to be undersensitive to the suffering of others. This is the picture of psychopathy, right? So this is a brain of someone who is very dangerous.
You're not going to magically inject empathy into somebody who does not have empathy.
One strategy that might work is to appeal to the psychopath's self-interest.
You want to get them to understand that, the way that they're acting and behaving, thinking and feeling is actually harming them. It's actually slowing their progress in life. It's actually giving them sort of a lower quality life than they could have.
Some experts say early intervention is the key. They believe children who display antisocial behavior and callous, unemotional traits can be turned around. It's crucial to recognize the red flags. The experts offer a survival guide, what you need to know to protect yourself.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So if someone seems like they're really coming on strong, they're really glib, superficial, fast talker, seem really interested in you, promise the world with no hesitation, that's probably someone to be careful of.
Don't wear blinders. Enter new relationships with eyes wide open. Anyone who seems too perfect is likely far from it. Ask lots of questions.
Whatever you're feeling, and if you do question things with your partner, then it is best to trust those instincts. Follow your gut feelings and run as far away from this type of person as possible.
Know yourself. Psychopaths know what buttons to push. Be aware of your vulnerabilities and blind spots, and be wary of anyone who zeroes in on them. Set firm ground rules. Psychopaths want control, so establish and maintain strict boundaries. If you find yourself a target, know when to cut your losses and get professional help.
If people know what to look for, if they understand the true essence of this disorder, if they realize how vulnerable they really are, if they don't pay attention to the red flags, if they understand how intense the damage can be if they ignore the red flags, this can all be very helpful, and I think it could go a long way towards stopping, the amount of destruction that these individuals can cause.